Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jasmine, and I'm going to be talking to you today about your options to study in Germany, how you can do that, and different steps that you take to enable to have a successful journey to a degree program here in Germany. So before I start today, I have a presentation for you. The webinar is approximately 90 minutes. Before I start, I'll briefly introduce myself a little bit in our organization, just so you know the information I'm sharing with you is reliable. And of course, any information I share with you today during the webinar, I will also cite appropriate sources from the German government. I will include those links. I will send that to you, and I will give you all official information, especially when it comes to the DAAD. So today, I'm going to take approximately an hour for my presentation, and then we'll have around 30 minutes of Q&A. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions you would like during the presentation. You don't have to wait until the end. There's a Q&A underneath here in Zoom. I'm sure you're all familiar with Zoom because of the pandemic, so I won't waste time explaining how to use Zoom, but you can submit any questions, even right now while I'm doing the introduction. Feel free to submit any questions you might have. I will also give you my personal email here in the chat. So you cannot use the chat, but I can use the chat to send all of you some important links and information, which I will also do throughout the webinar when it comes to visa requirements or certain databases to find information. I'll share that in the chat. But you don't have to stress and quickly copy everything I share in the chat. I will send a follow-up email tomorrow to all of the participants of this webinar, and it's going to have the information that I shared with you. It won't have the presentation, but it will be a PDF and by section like scholarships or visa information, and I will share with you all of the important links today. So anything I share today, whether it's a database where you can find scholarships or study programs or what have you, you will also get that via email, but I will try to share it during the presentation in the chat so you can already start looking. So as I said before, you don't have to wait to send your questions in the Q&A. You can do that throughout the whole presentation. I will look at them at the end, though, so just be aware of that. I'm not ignoring you. I'll answer them at the end. Hi, Claudia. Nice to see you. Thanks for your message. Okay, so before I get started with the presentation, let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll share some information about MyGermanUniversity. You're probably wondering who we are and what we do. We're collaborating with the Generalkonsulat in San Francisco, and so maybe that's how you know us now. So my name is Jasmine, and I live in Berlin, so that's where I'm joining you from. It's morning for all of you, but for me, it's 8 p.m. I live in Berlin, and I've been in Germany now for about 6 years. So when I finished my bachelor's program in Texas, I'm originally from the US, of course, I finished my bachelor's program in Texas, and I was awarded maybe 2 months after my bachelor's a research fellowship, which is granted by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. I will mention them again later when I talk about scholarships. It's a very great organization with a lot of funding, but right now that's not going to be as relevant for most of you because they do have more funding for PhDs and postdocs. But I was awarded a fellowship from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation called the German Chancellor Fellowship. I came to Germany, and through the fellowship, I did 3 months of an intensive language course. I did a research fellowship at a think tank here in Berlin for 1.5 years. My particular focus is in international security, specifically cybersecurity and data protection. And then after my research fellowship, I did my master's here in Germany as well in international relations and global governance. And upon completing my master's, I did that in Bremen, not in Berlin. I moved back to Berlin last year, actually, at the very beginning of the first wave of the pandemic here, which was a little stressful. And now I'm just based in Berlin and helping students just like yourselves find their journey to come and study in Germany like I did. So that's just a little bit of background about myself. I do not have German citizenship, so I had to do the visa pathway. I will talk about different pathways today, so I will also send you information on visa requirements, and for those of you who may have dual citizenship, it won't be as relevant for you, but I will be sure to focus on both. So before I delve deeper now into the topic, I first want to talk a little bit about MyGermanUniversity, just so you know who we are. So here is my presentation. So I like to explain what our organization is by first telling people what it is not. So we are not a scholarship organization. We're not a university either, but we have more than 2,000 study programs on our database. We do focus right now on English taught programs. However, today I'm not just going to feature those. I'm also going to show you our partner database, Hochschulkompass. This is the official database for the German Rectors Conference, and it has all German taught programs. So I will show you both of them today. Back to MyGU. We're a Hamburg-based startup. We're financed by an award from the German government, and we partner with different institutions around the globe right now. We host also webinars for international students from other countries. I've hosted webinars. My native language is English and Spanish, so I also host webinars for students from Latin and South America, and we also host webinars in Russian and Portuguese and different languages for students. So what we do is to help international students and provide them with information for free. That's our whole goal, is that we want to take the stress away from students and provide access to all of this information without having students have to pay for it. So when you make an account, you can register for free. All of our articles are available for free, and we answer questions for free. You can send us an email, a message on Facebook, messages on Instagram. We answer all of your questions everywhere. And we also have our platform and our expert counselors. Our team is completely remote, which is really great. It was remote before the pandemic. I myself am based in Berlin. Our two co-founders, who both worked for the DAAD, they were heads of DAAD offices abroad, one in Peru and the other in Italy, and they are now both based in Hamburg. And we have colleagues, one who's from Peru and lives in Spain, the other is from Peru and lives in China. So we're very remote, and we all work together now because of the pandemic, which is convenient to be remote. Okay, but now you know a little bit about who we are and what we do. So let's get into this topic of studying in Germany. Again, just one more reminder, don't be shy. Feel free to ask any questions you like in the Q&A section. You can submit them anonymously. I won't shout out your name. Elizabeth asks, so you don't have to worry. If you write your name, maybe I will mention it, but that's okay. You don't have to be shy. Okay, so I laid out this presentation by different steps that you take in the process of looking for a study program, applying, getting here, etc. So and I did this by questions, or at least one main question at the beginning, and then the steps you take afterwards. So first, I want to talk about why you should study in Germany. Maybe some of you who are watching are interested, but you're not really sure. You're just doing it because maybe your parents want you to watch this webinar, or yeah, you have the option because maybe you're a dual citizen, but you'd rather stay in the US and you're not really sure. So I'll give you some benefits of studying in Germany. The second step is qualifying for a study program. So you need to be eligible. You can't just say, I want to study, okay, let me do it. You have to be eligible to do that. Even if you don't meet the minimum eligibility requirements, which I will talk about, I will highlight not only the IB diploma, but also a high school diploma, if you have AP testing, if you don't, and so on, what qualifies you for a study program. If you don't currently qualify, there are also options, which I will discuss as well. So don't think that, well, I didn't do an AP test and it's too late, I'm a senior, or what have you. There are still options, so there's no need to fret. Third, finding a study program. So where do you do that? If you want to search for German taught programs, I will highlight those today. If you are more interested, or let's say you're a little nervous about your German skills and you want to come to Germany and work on your German and use it, but you'd be more comfortable in an English taught program, that's okay too. German is very important. I use German, well, in Berlin, it's not as necessary, but for my job, I speak to the co-founders, my colleagues. In German, even though we all speak English, and in our group meetings, we use English because it's the language everybody knows, but I speak to colleagues in German as well. I use that every day, and it's really important, especially for finding a job in Germany if you want to stay here or doing an internship during your studies. Finally, getting started. What's the first thing you need to do when you decide, okay, I want to study in Germany, I think I'm going to give this a shot? What do you need to do first? So I will talk about all of these topics, and again, I will send you a follow-up email with any important links and information that I talk about today during this webinar. So the first, studying in Germany, why should I do it? So I'll start off with some quick facts about Germany. Some things that maybe you don't know. So if you don't know, the country that ranks #1 in the world when it comes to international university or top-ranking universities is, if you can guess it, the United States. The Ivy Leagues take care of that easily, so the US is #1 in the world when it comes to top-ranking institutions. The UK is second in the globe when it comes to top-ranking institutions. But what you may not know is that Germany is actually third in the world. So it's just behind the US and the UK. But what makes Germany stick out a little bit among its top 5 competitors, top 5 countries around the globe, is the second bullet point here, which is German institutions German public universities are generally tuition-free. Of course, there are some exceptions for specialized programs that may charge tuition. There's one state in Germany, Baden-Württemberg, which if you are not an EU citizen, they will also charge a marginal tuition fee of 1,500 euros per semester. And there are private universities which also charge tuition. But generally, for the majority of programs from public universities, public institutions, they are tuition-free. So this is what sets Germany apart. If tuition is not a problem for you and you're not looking for a tuition for university, then that's even better. You have more options for you. But if that's one of the reasons that attracts you to Germany, you don't have to fear that you're maybe sacrificing your quality and your education to attend a public university, because actually the top universities in Germany, which are quite competitive, are all public institutions. Finally, you can also study in English if you're not as comfortable in German. That was a surprise to many of the students that I hosted webinars for. So, of course, you can come to Germany and study in German. This is the whole idea around coming to Germany, right? But you can also come to Germany and study in an English program. And even if you are fluent in German or you have excellent German skills, if you are really nervous about studying in a rigorous academic program in German, you can also take this program in English while you work on your German skills and practice your German here as well. So 5 main reasons to study in Germany. I mentioned the top class education. Study in English or German. And so again, German programs, if you want to study in German, you have so many options available to you, more than 20,000 study programs from more than 400 universities. If you want to study in English, you have some smaller options for you. On our platform, we feature about 250 bachelor's programs in English and more than 1,700 master's programs. But again, if you want to study in German, you have a lot more options. So, I guess you got a peek of 5. So 3rd is no high tuition fees, 4th is internships, and 5 is work opportunities. So in German universities, internships are typically required. Not always, it's not the majority, but it's very normal for an internship to be required as part of your study program, whether it's a bachelor's or a master's. And that's something that I found really attractive when I was looking at degree programs here. In my bachelor's, I did do an internship. I did 3 internships actually, but they weren't required of my program. I just did them because I wanted to do them and I really enjoyed them. But in master's programs, they're typically required in Germany and in bachelor's programs as well. So just an FYI for that. For work opportunities, if you have dual citizenship, you don't have to worry about this. But if you don't have German citizenship and you're worried what's going to happen when you finish your study program, do you just, the day after you finish, you have to leave Germany? That's not how it works. Students who graduate from a German university are eligible for an 18-month visa where you can look for a job in your field. So after you finish your study program, your student visa will expire, and then you can get this 18-month visa. And during this time, it has to be in your field, of course. You can't just get a job at a cafe around the corner and say, great, I can stay now. It does have to be in your field. But this is something really unique when it comes to work opportunities, because you have an opportunity, you have a chance through this visa, you have time to look for a job. And let's say if you are attending a smaller university in a smaller city, you can travel around Germany, go to a bigger city, look for a job abroad. It doesn't matter where in Germany. As long as you have a job, you can turn your looking for a job visa, for lack of a better term, into a long-term work visa, and you can stay in Germany as well. Okay, so the first question is, can I see myself studying in Germany? This is the first idea. If those things sound great and it interests you and you're still watching, then that's good. That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. A lot of students are really unsure if they want to come here because maybe a difference in culture, which of course happens, and that's fine. I've been here for almost 6 years and I'm still not used to it, but that's okay. You never get used to a place, especially if you travel. And so if you can see yourself studying here, that's good, because that means you're already taking a huge step by considering going abroad to Germany to study. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight basic eligibility requirements. This is going to be probably most interesting and most nitty-gritty when it comes to the details, especially considering that the high school diploma does not generally qualify you. In Germany, they're sticklers for bureaucracy and for rules, and different degree programs will accept different courses. Let me explain this a little bit better in the next slides. So the general eligibility requirements for any bachelor's program, the basics, not even looking at extracurriculars and volunteer work, these are just extras, just the most basic thing that qualifies you is going to be a previous degree, which for you will be a diploma, a high school diploma or the IB diploma. The second is a language certificate. So the De Ist 2 Sprachdiplom, this will qualify you, this will demonstrate to universities that you have the German skills to take part in a German taught program. Other qualifying certificates are any sort of C1 certificate, C1, that's going to qualify you. Some programs even take B2 if you have B2 German, but I think most of you should be okay with that. So it really depends on the study program individually. They individually can decide. So don't think, okay, if it's German taught, I have to have this level of German. Generally, C1 is accepted, but it varies. Some programs accept a B2. So just make sure you look at the specifics of the program. One note under the second point here, if you only have the De Ist 1 Sprachdiplom, it doesn't mean you will not be eligible. This is something I will follow up on shortly, but there's something called Studienkolleg. If you don't know what that is, Studienkolleg is well, it translates to college, but it's a one-year school that you attend before you start a degree program at a German university. And this is used as a buffer for international students. When I say international students, I just mean non-EU students or even non-German students, because some EU students have done Studienkollegs. But it's a one-year period where you're studying at a school to improve your language skills for the course that you're going to begin after this one-year Studienkolleg. And this is also geared specifically towards the subject you would like to study. An example can be if you are interested in a bachelor's in biology, but maybe you have C1 German, but when it comes to this particular vocabulary, this special jargon for the science program that you're going to be enrolled in, you might not have this. And maybe you're not comfortable with your German yet, or you only have the De Ist 1 Sprachdiplom. In that case, you would typically take part of this one-year Studienkolleg. You buffer up your German skills. You learn the specific vocabulary for the study program. There's two different topics or types of Studienkollegs. One is more focused on humanities, and the second is more STEM a hard science base where they teach you all of the terminology you're going to need for the relevant programs. And you just kind of get used to Germany and how the courses are going to be set up. So you do have options. This is going to be really important that you remember the Studienkolleg when I talk about the high school diploma. If it's a little too late and you see, okay, well, I'm already a junior or I'm already a senior and I don't have time to take this other class to qualify me for a program, don't fret. I know it doesn't feel great to wait, but you can do the one-year Studienkolleg. You come to Germany, that you take part in that in person. It can't be done virtually because the idea is that you're here. It's also kind of a cultural integration process. And you can do this and then start your program immediately after that. So there are options for you as well if you don't immediately qualify. And the third is visa. So if you have dual citizenship, you don't have to worry about this. If you do not, then you will have to get a visa. And I'm going to take the next slide to show you what the visa process is more or less. When it comes to financial matters, you will not need a visa to enter Germany. So the way it works for American citizens is that you can come to Germany with the Schengen rights and your US citizenship. You just come with your passport and you are allowed to come into the country, and you have 90 days after you enter to find some sort of apply for a residence permit. So with this residence permit, in order to qualify for it, you have to get a blocked bank account and demonstrate that you have funds in order to survive in Germany and take care of yourself throughout your study program. So you won't need a visa to come in. You can enter with just your passport, but after you arrive, you will need to open a bank account in order to get your residence permit for your study program. Now, the blocked bank account, it's called a blocked bank account because you can only withdraw a certain amount of money per month. You can also, I'm sure, open a separate bank account if you want to have, you don't want to have a limit on how much you can withdraw per month, but you will have to have this blocked bank account for the visa. You need to have a blocked bank account. So this bank account, again, you can only withdraw a certain amount per month. And the German government came up with this amount that says in order to sort of take care of yourself as a student in Germany, you need to demonstrate that you can have 853 euros per month. So that totals out for a 1-year period because you have to have that in your account for the whole year. So you can't show that you have 853 every month. You have to show that you have enough to be here for 1 year, and you have to do that every year. And so for a 1-year period, that means you have to have 10,236 euros in that bank account. And that being said, that's a really generous amount of money. I was a student in Germany, and I've also asked other students who had this blocked bank account if that was enough, and they said that was more than enough. Again, I did not study in Berlin. I did study in Bremen, which is a smaller city close to the Dutch border. It's a little less expensive than Berlin, but Germany is generally not expensive for students, I will say. But again, that depends on the city you live in. Some top 3 expensive cities in Germany. One is Stuttgart. Munich, if you really want to live in Munich, Munich is pretty well known. It was the most expensive city in Germany for a long time, but Stuttgart beat it out this year. So also think about student life, going and having a coffee with your friends, traveling, and so on. This amount of money should cover that. If you don't have that money to put in your account all at one time, there are 2 things that you can do to replace that money. Let's say you can only have half. Maybe you only have around 5,000 euros to show and you need the rest to come from somewhere else. You can use a guarantor to excuse the rest of the amount. A guarantor is a German resident, which, to explain a little bit more, they're like a co-signer, I guess, if you're getting a loan. So they're going to sign a piece of paper that says that they are financially responsible for you. If you cannot take care of yourself for whatever reason, if you need money, that they are going to provide for you. Finally, if you have scholarships, you can use scholarships towards this total amount. So let's say you only have half of the amount, but you have a scholarship for around 500 euros per month that's going to cover the rest. then you can use this letter, this scholarship acceptance letter for the visa, and that will also qualify you for that. I will quickly share with you the visa requirements in the chat section. So we have a lot of articles on our site, which I will show you shortly. And this one is the link to our visa requirements article. We do link you to the German government sites in this article, so you can look at all of that information from the official source where it comes from. Okay, so back to our presentation. Following back to eligibility requirements, so the visa, the certificate, and your language certificate as well. I want to now go a little bit further and talk about general admissions requirements. This is where we get to the extra stuff, the volunteer work and extracurriculars and so on. So just like in the US, admissions requirements from universities vary. It really depends. Some programs might be more strict and they might want you to have maybe some work or internship experience and some not. For bachelor's programs, it's typically rare that they demand you have an internship already. For master's programs, it's a little bit different, but again, that's a little further down the line for all of you. So some examples, which I'm sure you already know and are already thinking about, which don't differ very much from universities in the US. Having a letter of motivation, or sometimes called also a statement of purpose. This is a letter where you have a page to 2 pages to really show who you are, talk about why you want to enroll in this program, what it means for you, and why it's important to your academic and professional goals. Other things that are something to think about for a successful application are having a good GPA, any experience, volunteer work, and so on. You can look at each course website for all of the details on what they would like. But something I really want to highlight before I move on from this slide is the letter of motivation / statement of purpose. And this is usually skimped over by many students and they don't really give it a lot of attention. And I personally think that it is the most important part of your application package, because this is where you can tell universities what's special about you, something that they're not going to see on your resume or CV. If you don't know what a CV is, it stands for curriculum vitae. This CV it differs a little bit from a resume. A resume, typically you don't go over 1 page. A CV, depending on the type of CV, it can be 2 to 5 pages. So that when I say CV, that's what I talk about. In Europe, a CV is the more general term or what you would use. So on your CV and your resume, it's really brief and really short, and you should not repeat that in your motivation letter. They already have your resume. They don't need to see you reiterate what's on your resume and your motivation letter, but take the chance to let universities know who you are and tell them what motivates you, why you deserve this apart from other students, and why you are so special and why they need you in their program. I think it's the most important part and the one that's the most overlooked by students. You wait until the last minute and you just type it up quickly in 30 minutes and there's typos and you didn't really give it a lot of thought. Or you copied and pasted it and just kind of changed the name of the university and program. And this is such a huge mistake. You shouldn't do this. Really take your time on it. For my motivation letter, I like to think I killed it for my research fellowship. Just to give you an idea of how competitive it was, only 10 people are accepted in the United States, and most of them had PhDs and masters, and I was the only person who was not accepted without a graduate degree and not from an Ivy League university. And so I personally think that the motivation letter is what did it. And the selection committee, I was flown to Germany and I interviewed for 3 days for this fellowship. And I was told by the selection committee that like my motivation letter stood out and it was really different. So just make sure you spend time on it, because if you think, well, I don't qualify, this is where you can really kill it and get some attention here from universities. Okay, so step 2, are you eligible? And this is going to refer to your high school diploma or IB diploma, your language certificate, and your visa. So with that, I am now going to share with you I'm going to share my screen and go to an article when it comes to bachelor's requirements, academic requirements to be eligible. I'm going to share the link to this article with you in the chat shortly, but I just want to show you here. So in our article, if you, on the left-hand side, you can see different information when it comes to seeing if you qualify for a bachelor's program. Some important things to remember or to note when you look at it. First is the qualification check. So the ANABIN database is a database that Germany uses to see if you qualify for a bachelor's or master's program or whichever program you want to study. And you have to use the ANABIN database in order to see if you qualify. However, the ANABIN database is the official one from the German Rectors Conference, and it is the one that is going to be referenced by universities when they're checking for your qualification. So the Central Office for Foreign Education here in Germany, they're the one who created this database, and it is the most up-to-date official one. That being said, the ANABIN database is not user-friendly. It does not have a really great layout, and it's a little bit complicated, and I think they could really you give this site a boost. I think a lot of students really struggle with this. It's all in German, but most of you shouldn't have a problem with that it's in German. Maybe some of the terminology will be a little bit confusing if you don't know the specifics about it. We do have an article about the ANABIN database, how to use it with screenshots and translations, and it's really specific, so you can also take that. But this is what you need to use to see if your high school diploma or IB diploma is going to qualify you. The DAAD, which is the German Academic Exchange Service, they kind of ripped the data from the ANABIN database and created their own database. Again, also reliable, but just note that if you're using the DAAD database to check for your qualification, make sure you also check the ANABIN, because the ANABIN has the last word. They're the official one. The DAAD may have their version of it, but it's not as up to date because the ANABIN has the final word. So here I linked to the DAAD version of the database. Let me first share this article, and then I will share the DAAD database. That is going to be your best friend. The DAAD one is really intuitive. Everything is in English. That's not a problem if you use the ANABIN one and you need German. But the English version of the database is from the DAAD is really specific and especially friendly, for students who have high school diplomas. So you select your country, you select high school diploma, and then you even get down to these topics here on the left-hand side. So recognition of your high school diploma or the IB diploma depends on the classes you take. Just having the diploma or the IB diploma will not qualify you for a bachelor's program. It depends on the topic and the bachelor's you want to study. For example, let's say you're interested, again, in a bachelor's in biology. But a bachelor's in biology, to be eligible, you have to have a certain number of AP classes, or if you don't have AP classes, you have to have a certain number, or units, as they say. Units translates, I believe, to 1 semester, not 1 year, because this wouldn't make sense then. In mathematics and science, social studies, and so on, that's all outlined here. So if you have AP classes, that's also outlined here, the grade you need for your AP test in each subject to qualify for certain subjects. Another example, if you are interested in a bachelor's in history, you don't need to have all of these science classes in high school, but you might need to have more English, literature, and history classes in high school to qualify. Furthermore, you also need to have a good grade in these classes in order to qualify. So the DAAD database, they have you enter the courses you took, the topics of those courses, the grade, and so on. And then at the end, it tells you you qualify according to your entries. And again, just double check on the ANABIN database. Or it will tell you you don't qualify. If you don't qualify, again, don't stress. You are always eligible to study in Germany if you are willing to do a Studienkolleg and have this 1-year period. where you come and work on your German skills and work on maybe getting ready for the study program. They also have classes which are subject related to the degree program as well. So you can always qualify, you just might have to do a one-year Studienkolleg. Also, for your high school diploma to be recognized, it has to be continuously, or consecutively. You can't have gap years. You can't have taken maybe a year or two off and then come back and finish your course. And all of that is detailed here. And the DAAD database link is in the article. I tried to copy it, but for some reason it wasn't working. So you can just find that in the article as well if you want to use the DAAD's version of that. Oh, let me quickly go back. Actually, I didn't share the IB diploma. So if you scroll down here, this is just if you have a high school diploma. But if we scroll down, we also have, here we go, the IB diploma. Again, it also depends on the specific courses and your grades in those courses. And the IB organization has to submit not only your IB diploma, but your official IB diploma transcript, which details all of the courses you took with the grades, because that's going to determine whether you're eligible or not. And when it comes to these eligibility requirements, the universities are the ones who can ultimately decide if you're eligible. There aren't German countrywide restrictions. If you want to be enrolled in a STEM bachelor's program, you have to have this many science courses in high school. It's up to each program, not even the university. The university, they may have their general regulations, but the study program coordinators are the ones who set the final rules. And if they're willing to make an exception and accept a certain class, maybe AP class, in place for something else and are willing to waive it, then that's up to them. So make sure you always contact with special cases. Contact the program coordinators of the degree program where you want to apply, because they're the ones who are going to have the final say. Okay, so now we are past eligibility, how to find a study program. So here I'm going to talk about two key resources that you should keep in mind when you're looking for a study program. So as I did mention before, since you are eligible to apply to German taught and English taught programs, that means you have more than 20,000 study programs at your disposal for more than 400 universities. These are really great options. And the two places where I will recommend you visit, and the first is going to be Hochschulkompass. I'm going to show that to you briefly. And it's the German Rectors Conference for Higher Education here in Germany. So they have bachelor's and master's. They also have PhDs, postdocs, but that's not relevant for you right now, maybe down the line. And these are all German taught programs. They also have maybe some language courses listed, I believe. And let me quickly share that with you in the chat. And then on the right-hand side, you see MyGermanUniversity Study Finder. That is our database. We have Germany's largest database for English taught study programs. Again, even if you want a German taught program, you can always feel free to look at the articles on the site, which have a lot of detailed information step by step on where you are in the study process. So when it comes to getting a visa, applying to scholarships, finding housing, student life, and so on. So I want to quickly share with you Hochschulkompass, just so you see what the site looks like for when you visit it yourself, and our study finder. I'm sharing the links now in the chat. So, oops, I also shared my notes, my instructions. It's okay, you can see that. So let's go to Hochschulkompass now. Okay, it's loading. I really love Hochschulkompass's database because they have so many different filters, and you can really filter out study programs that are not as relevant for you. So this is what the site looks like here, Higher Education Compass. It is in German. They have a German site, which you can use as well. I just have everything for only English speakers, because I'm used to hosting webinars for people who don't, for students who don't speak German. So I have the English version here already in my notes, but again, you can look at it in German. It doesn't matter, there's no difference. But typically the German pages have maybe a little bit more information, not more study programs, that doesn't matter, but maybe the information that they list there. So as you can see here already, you see more than 20,000 results. This is just kind of the more general search. Here under extended search, if you scroll down, you can see this ton of filters that you can put in. If you are maybe you are kind of deciding right now between two majors, but you just know you want to study at Heidelberg University or Humboldt University in Berlin. You can also search by university, you can search by city, you can search by state. It's really, really flexible. Let's put here bachelor's. And let's leave it very general. So already bachelor's, you see more than 9,000 programs here. And you can search through more than 9,000 bachelor's programs. Let's click on one. Let's look at academic speech therapy in Würzburg. Okay, it's a full-time bachelor's program. Oh no. If you click on the pages in Hochschulkompass, it gives you a general overview of that study program. The city, the university. I always encourage students to go directly to the course websites. Parents do. Go directly to the course websites. They are going to have the most accurate information. So this is great for a general search if you have no idea about the university or program you're interested in and you just kind of want to get a taste of what's out there. That's great. It gives you a nice overview. But if you're looking at detailed programs, you know you're applying, you're narrowing it down to your top 5 programs you're going to apply to, make sure you go to the course websites. So here you see, here's a quick overview. It's a Bachelor of Science. You see how long it is. In Germany, bachelors are 3 years typically. So it's full-time, undergraduate, 7 semesters. It's in Würzburg. You can see the field of study and so on, the language. And again, you click on the course website here and you can go to the page of the program and see all of the specifics of the program. So that's going to be your first stop when you're looking for German programs. If you're looking for English programs, then I encourage you to use the Study Finder. Again, just like the Hochschulkompass's filtering system, it's the same here. You don't need me to teach you how to use a database, I know, but I just want to make sure you know what the page looks like. So if you Google it and click on the wrong one, I want to make sure you have reliable information from the correct site. So this is our site, MyGermanUniversity here. This is our Study Finder. And let's click Bachelor's and let's just search for Business, Economics, and Law. It's pretty general. You click and then you're going to see results. On the left-hand side, you can filter even further. If you are interested in a tuition-free university specifically, you can go to Finances and select tuition-free only. If you have a budget for how much you can pay tuition, you can also put a maximum of what you're willing to pay per semester. Also, depending on the application, like when it opens, how you apply. I will talk about how you apply later, but there's different ways of applying. And if you really don't want to do one type, you can search for a certain one. Language skills, German skills needed, no skills, German skills needed, and so on. And you can search here for different programs. During the search, you'll see here right away, it will show you the tuition fee, how long the program is, when it starts, and then of course you can click on it and see more details, and we also direct you to the course website of that program. Oh, this is where I went. I did a program that was between 2 universities, and Jacobs University Bremen is a private university in Bremen, which my program was part of. Okay, so now you have those 2 excellent sources for finding a study program. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay, so step 3, where can I find a program and how can I increase my chances to get in? So your first 2 sources should be Hochschulkompass and MyGU and our Study Finder site. And I already talked about the extra things that you can do to make your application stand out. One thing I will note is the DAAD also has its own course program search. They do also rip the information from Hochschulkompass and they have it available in English to search for. I personally find the Hochschulkompass one much more comprehensive. I will say the first place to go to the DAAD for is when it comes to funding. Feel free to use the DAAD's core search as well, but I will first recommend Hochschulkompass because they are the official German Rectors Conference of Education database, and it is incredibly comprehensive and the most up-to-date one. Okay, so getting started. So what's the first thing you need to do if you know, okay, I think I'm going to give it a shot, I want to apply, I know where I can find study programs, I know where I can check to see if I'm eligible, how do I do this? So how to apply? Applying to German universities differs a little bit than applying to universities in the US. So one way it differs is that the way you apply. In the US, typically you apply directly to the university and that's it. And in Germany, there are some other methods, which I will talk about here. For applications, generally, you don't have to do any sort of test. So if you have any GRE scores or GMAT scores, anything like this, SAT, you can submit it with the application. German universities are used to applicants having these scores, and if you want to submit them, if you scored well, feel free, but it is not required for you to take a standardized test to apply to a German university. So, I mean, if you don't test well, maybe you are killing it with your GPA extracurriculars, but you just can't test well, you don't have to worry about that so much because German universities won't ask you for a score. Again, check the specifics of the study program because it can be that they have some sort of rule that says, well, if you're from the US, then you have to submit an SAT score. I haven't seen universities that do that, but you don't know. So just double check the study program. But in Germany, they won't ask for a standardized test score with your application. So that's something that differs. Another thing is that there aren't interviews. You don't have to worry about doing an interview. It's pretty black and white here. You send in your application, they look over it, and they give you a response. So they're not going to call you for an interview unless you have a scholarship tied to your study program. But again, that's not the norm. When you apply to a university in Germany, you're typically just applying to the program, and funding is completely separate. Again, if you're applying to a private university that charges tuition, and because they have tuition fees, they're willing to give you maybe waivers or reductions in tuition, and then you have to do an interview for that, that's an exception. But typically, that's not the norm if you're applying to a study program. So, two ways to apply, directly to the university or through UniAssist. UniAssist is a national service provider to many universities across Germany, and they are a platform that processes the applications from international students. So if you're applying by UniAssist, it might even feel like you're not applying to your university, but you're applying to UniAssist. You take all of your application documents, your official transcripts, and your language certificates and everything, and then you send it to UniAssist. UniAssist takes your documents, and they process it and make sure you've turned everything in and everything is, you have your grade conversions correct from the US GPA to the German and one and so on, and then they forward that to the university. And then after they forward it to the university, they look at your documents, they determine if you're accepted or not. They then notify UniAssist, and then you find out if you're accepted or not from UniAssist. So they're kind of this middleman, for lack of a better term, to explain what it is. If you apply via UniAssist, you don't really have a choice. The study program determines how the application process is. So if you don't want to apply via UniAssist, unfortunately, that's not your choice. You have to just do it through the process that your favorite study program sets in. So yeah, unfortunately, that's just the case. There is, of course, direct apply, which you're used to, where you apply directly to universities. And so that's how you determine that. UniAssist does charge per application that you submit. The first application is 75 euros, and every application after that is 30 euros. Again, there's not really a way around that. They do have some waivers for people who apply But usually it's for mitigating circumstances, maybe having refugee status. Some universities do take up the full cost of the application fee, and they say if you're applying to our study program, we're going to pay for your UniAssist fee. And you can see a list of those universities on the UniAssist website. I can share that shortly in the chat for you. But again, this isn't something you should start worrying about now. If finances are really important for you and you need a program that doesn't use UniAssist because maybe you just can't afford to apply through them, then use our site or whichever site, Hochschulkompass as well. And they also have a mode of application, and you can select programs that don't use UniAssist specifically. So just to note how it differs so you're not confused, like, what is this organization? It's very normal. Many universities use them. Okay, so some typical general deadlines for the winter and summer semester. So the winter semester typically starts in September, October, and the summer semester starts in March, April. So there's one to two general deadlines. Again, it varies with each study program. My program, for example, for my master's, I had to apply, I think, a year and a half in advance. Yeah, it was really in advance. And actually, I found out late. I only found out I was accepted maybe a month before the program started, and it was a very fast move. So it depends on the programs. If it's a program where they have a lot of international students, in that case, it may take them longer to process applications. Or if it's a competitive program, like the Technical University of Munich, TUM, they accept, I think for some of their programs, they only have 30 spots, but they receive more than 2,000 applicants. And so you have to think about that it takes time to process all of these applications and look over them. Okay, so what are the next steps to take? When should I get started? The first thing you should do is to set a date on when your application is due, when you need to have everything turned in on time. And I would encourage you all to set your own personal deadlines well in advance of the university deadline. I will talk about COVID-19 shortly, but right now UniAssist is very backed up when it comes to their applications. So we've heard from students that it's taking them maybe 6 weeks past the date they were supposed to find out if they were accepted to find out, that they're taking longer to respond to student inquiries. So make sure you really take the time and don't underestimate how long it will take you to collect all of your application documents, certificates, and so on, especially because of the pandemic. Some offices may be closed or may have limited working hours. And so make sure that you're keeping all of that in mind. Okay, so I'm getting to this last section here on scholarships, and then I will answer questions from the Q&A, and then I will also share with you some extra links in the chat. Okay, so scholarships. I'm going to leave you with 3 main sources on where to find scholarships. One more thing to note, very important, is that scholarships, as I said before, they are separate from the application of the university. So it's not how it is in the US typically, where you can apply and also mark you want to be eligible for scholarships, or the university offers scholarships directly and you apply through them. That's not the norm in Germany. Again, there are very special programs, especially private universities. I applied to the Hertie School of Governance in Berlin, which is a private university. I think for a 2-year master's, it was around 35,000 euros. They offered me funding, and that was kind of similar to the US system, where they offered tuition waiver or tuition reduction based on an application. You write an essay and so on, but this is not typical for most study programs. The scholarship application is done separately. You apply to scholarship organizations, and in many cases, you have to apply even before you apply to the study program. Many scholarship deadlines are before the deadline for the program you are applying for. So make sure you look at scholarships as well already. Okay, so first, I've mentioned them a lot before, the German Academic Exchange Service. They're going to be your first stop when it comes to looking for funding. So the German Academic Exchange Service, I will talk about in the next slide in detail, but they are the largest funding organization in Germany. The second place you should look, you will find there's not one page where they have all of these organizations listed collectively. We have that in our very comprehensive article about scholarships for students who want to study in Germany. And these are 13, in English it translates to promotion of talent organizations. In German it's Begabtenförderungswerke, and these are German organizations that have funding for international students. For those of you who have dual citizenship, make sure you take advantage of these organizations, because the funding for these German organizations is much more strict. You have to have C1 German typically. You have to have EU citizenship. If you don't have EU citizenship, then you have to have refugee status or have been in Germany for at least 5 years. So all of the requirements are really specific just to be able to apply, just to qualify. But if you have German citizenship and you have C1 German, that automatically qualifies you, and you should definitely look at these organizations for funding. We link all of these organizations in our scholarships article, and I also explain in detail what these organizations are. More on that shortly. Let me show you the third place organization. So I did mention before the Alexander von Humboldt Stiftung. They funded my research fellowship. This is not as relevant right now because they only have PhD postdoc funding. They're also a huge funding organization in Germany, very well known. But I want you to keep them in mind post-bachelor's, because they do have one fellowship which you are eligible for after you have a bachelor's degree, and it's called the German Chancellor Fellowship. Really generous. You come to Germany and they pay for you to be here for 2 years, and it's a great program. So I dropped that organization for you to keep in mind. And the second one is the name of a scholarship called the Deutschlandstipendium. Any student at a German university qualifies for the Deutschlandstipendium just because they're enrolled in a university. You can only apply after being enrolled for 1 year, and the university you attend processes that application. So once you are enrolled at a university, after a year, you will at some point, I'm sure, get an email saying, apply for the Deutschlandstipendium. I think it's like, can be 400 euros, 400 to 700. I'm not sure now. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you can just write an essay, and you can write it in English, you can write it in German, and they consider all students who want to apply for that. No requirements besides being a student at a German university. Something else that's important to note is BAföG. So BAföG is assistance from the German government. It's support. And you can get it based on various factors, mostly need-based. So the maximum award for students is 735 euros per month. And then you have payments afterwards. But the payment depends on your level of need, and sometimes payments can be forgiven. So it is an interest-free loan from the German government to study here, and afterwards you have payments, but they are waived depending on your need. This BAföG German assistance is only for German citizens. So if you have dual citizenship, this is something you can think about to take advantage of. So I'm going to show you the scholarships article, but first I want to highlight how important the DAAD is. So make sure it is your first stop when you're looking at funding. They're the largest funding organization in Germany for international academic cooperation. I did mention that already. They're the largest scholarship provider, and just so you know how much funding they have, they sponsor more than 150,000 students per year. So I want to now show you our scholarships article. But first I want to show you the DAAD website. The funding guide, which is the scholarship database for the DAAD. The DAAD has a lot of databases, searching for course programs, seeing if you are eligible, the requirements database, and this is their scholarship database. So here you can see, again, you have your filters on the left-hand side. They have more than 190 scholarships here for you. They have funding based on where you're from, what you want to study, if it's a degree program, if it's a language course, even like what type of degree you want to study, if it's in science or if it's in the arts and so on. So make sure you enter everything exactly. So I'm going to click US here and undergraduates. And let's see. So there are 36 different scholarships for undergrads from the US. And then it gets even more specific. So if you're looking at university summer courses, a German studies research grant, again, they have more research internships in science and engineering. They also have more general scholarships. There's a talent program. The state of Baden-Württemberg, this is the state that I mentioned in Germany that has tuition fees for all international students. If you're a dual citizen, that's not relevant for you. If you are not, they charge 1,500 euros per semester for international students, but it looks like this is a scholarship to put towards that and cover your tuition. So let's just click on this one because actually Baden-Württemberg has some of the top universities in Germany. Heidelberg University, for example. Let's see here. So here, when you click on a scholarship, it gives you an overview, the amount of funding, the requirements, the amount of scholarships they have, the funding period. Here, the scholarship amounts from 600 to 1,400 euros, and you can look at the different qualifications, apply, look at the requirements here, open a PDF, and so on. Okay, and for all other funding, which is not from the DAAD, I encourage you to use the scholarships article. So the article is on our site. Here we have all of the different, we have more than 60 articles on different topics on studying in Germany, and we link you to all relevant sources, whether it's the German government page, the DAAD, the ANABIN database, and so on. Here we link to all scholarship organizations. So these 13 promotion of talent organizations that I mentioned earlier, they are linked here as well, and I want to go to them directly. So each organization here is highlighted, and something about these organizations which should not scare you off. So when you start searching, I want to warn you so you have an idea. So many of these German organizations have an affiliation, whether it's political or religious or anything like this. How can I put it very simply to explain? So I tell students that it's very normal to take funding from these organizations. So they have money allotted to them from the German government in order to invest in education. And a lot of that is for international students. Some of these are very specific, and you have to be an EU student or have fluent German or both. So again, make sure you look at them if you have dual citizenship, or even if you have the fluent German, take a peek at the requirements. But if it has an affiliation, don't be scared to accept funding from an organization that has an affiliation. It's very normal. These are all well-respected organizations in Germany, and it's not a deal with the devil, for lack of a better explanation. So here, for example, so they are the largest funding one out of all of the Begabtenförderungswerke, and it's the Studienstiftung des Deutschen Volkes. And here you can see information, the number of fellows. You see that they are non-religious, apolitical, and they're neutral. But let's look at the next one, for example. So for each organization, we have facts and figures. We list the different types of scholarships for bachelors, for masters, doctoral candidates, and so on. And then we link you directly to the site. Let's look at one that is not. For example, okay, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. So the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is the CDU's organization. CDU is the Christian Democratic Union. This is the political party that Angela Merkel is from. And so the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is highly respected in Germany. It's also a think tank. They have a lot of funding for students to study in Germany. You can look here about some different scholarships they have, 850 euros per year. You need B2, and they have only for masters and doctorates. So since that's not relevant for you, you scroll further. This is a Social Democratic Party, SPD. The Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, again, a very reliable and well-respected organization in Germany. So it's a little bit different than the US. If you hear something has a political affiliation, people get really scared and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's not the case here in Germany. Because there are so many political parties here in Germany as well. I mean, there's a lot of different organizations, the FDP, for example, here you see another one, and so on. So again, don't be scared of looking at scholarships from these organizations. It's different in Germany, and I can see if you're reluctant and you're a little nervous, but you can read all about those organizations here. Make sure you look at them because they have a lot of funding that all of you will qualify for. Okay, so I just shared the link to the scholarships article. And I'm going to wrap up now my presentation, but first I want to share one really important thing, which is sort of the elephant in the room, which is COVID-19. So if you're wondering what is happening in Germany with COVID-19, well, and when it comes to social life and what's happening just with everyday life, Germany is currently on full lockdown. We have been since November, so only grocery stores and banks are open. Everything else is shut down. Cafes and restaurants, they can only have pickup or delivery, but everything has been closed down since November because of the cases here. There's also a limit with social restrictions, so you can only meet, if you're meeting with someone from another household, it can only be one-on-one. You have to have a medical grade mask and you have to have 2 meters distance. If it's from another household and they come to your home, it can only be one person. And there's a lot of restrictions also depending on the German state and the cases in those states. There's also a domestic travel restriction. So tourist travel is shut down. Hotels are not accepting tourists. You have to have a letter from your job saying you have to travel for your job. But if you're coming as a tourist, you are not allowed to stay in most hotels. And if you want to get a hotel, you always have to have a negative COVID test. And so there's a lot of stuff going on here, which I'm sure is the same or similar in some parts of the US. So that's just what everyday life is like. How about study programs? That is not affected. So right now everything is virtual, but there's nothing keeping you from coming into Germany. Right now the border's completely shut down for COVID variant countries, which is I think 6 different countries, but the main ones are the UK, Brazil, South Africa, Portugal. The US is not on that list. So if you are a US citizen or if you have dual citizenship, you can enter Germany. You have to have certain steps of how to do that. So you have to have a negative COVID-19 test. There's a free test when you enter the country. You have to have proof of accommodation. You have to have an acceptance letter from a university and so on. But it's not impossible. It's being done. So just note that you can still apply. Universities in Germany have never ceased to accept applications from international students. Actually, the number of international student applications has increased, and so you don't have to worry that that's going to affect greatly your chances of studying here. It might affect your student life if you're looking to apply in the next year. Maybe things won't be completely back to normal, but maybe next year and the year after, that's going to be different. So basic information, as I said before, apply as early as you can, especially if you're applying via UniAssist, but hopefully that won't be as relevant to most of you. Protocols, make sure you keep in mind travel restrictions and so on. So right now, the US is not affected, and I don't foresee that in the future, but again, just keep up to date with travel restrictions and what's happening here in Germany. Maybe you really don't want to come because the restrictions are harsh and you want to have more of a normal student life if you're starting right away, then maybe consider waiting a year or do a Studienkolleg. So just something to think about. All of the restrictions when it comes to changes in higher education here and the pandemic just with everyday life, we do post that on our COVID-19 update on our page. It's information you can find in English, which again, for most of you, it's not a problem because the information in German you can access just fine. But we have all of that on our website as well if you're interested. Okay, so now let me take a peek at your questions. Now I'll take questions. We have 20 more minutes. I didn't see a lot of questions there, so I'm not sure it'll take the 20 minutes, but let's see. So, will a bachelor's degree from Germany be recognized in the US? Is there a process for it? I'm referring to a program in a German language, not in English. Well, first off, I will say yes right away. If you have a bachelor's program, a bachelor's degree from Germany, even if it's in German, that doesn't really make a difference. And just like having a bachelor's degree from the US, that is also recognized here in Germany. So you don't have to worry about doing a bachelor's here and then returning to the US. that typically is not a problem. Actually, I would even say that it gives you a step up whenever you're applying to whether it's jobs or graduate programs, because most bachelor's programs in Germany require you to have an internship. So having this type of international experience and plus the language skills, I mean, I don't think you can lose with that. Don't think that it's going to be less of value than a US bachelor's degree. That's definitely not the case. So you don't have to worry about that. Okay, let's see. Can you also please speak about the timing of the application relative to US college applications? Sure. So as I said before, there's typically 2 semester starts. You have the winter semester that starts in September, October, and the summer semester that starts March, April. The deadline of the applications, like I said, I can't give you a general, well, usually apply 6 months in advance. That's what I like to recommend, but it really depends on the study program. I really would urge you to narrow down your top programs and make sure you check the deadlines for those programs, because as I said, my deadline for my master's program was way in advance. Actually, I applied for a DAAD scholarship as well, and the deadline for that scholarship was before the deadline for the study program. And the deadline for the study program, I think I submitted my application in June, and I didn't get accepted until the following June. The scholarship deadline was January, so a year and a half in advance, and then the application was due a year in advance. And again, my program was really international. I think there was only one German person, but there was people from Pakistan, Georgia, Russia, Brazil, me and one other American. I mean, it was really international. And so it takes time to apply for a visa and to look at all of these applicants. And people also, the selection committee also has to weigh, I mean, how like a degree from Pakistan compared to a degree from Georgia, is it the same? Are they going to be ready to take part in this program? So there's a lot of things to consider. Generally, I will say make sure you apply 6 months in advance, but it depends on the program, because if the deadline is more than 6 months in advance, well, I already told you wrong. So unfortunately, I can't tell you, oh, well, typically it's going to take this long. I waited a year to find out if I was accepted. So yeah, unfortunately, I have to just say, check the course website specifically. And especially considering COVID-19, it might take them a little bit longer to get back to you. Okay. Can you apply while you're in 12th grade, like in the US, or do you need to wait until you graduate high school? No, you can apply when you're still in high school before you've graduated. What you would do in that case is have your high school give you an unofficial transcript. You just tell them that you haven't finished your study program yet. And then as soon as you graduate, you send them a copy of your official transcript with all of your final grades on it, and a copy, a PDF copy of your high school diploma as well. And so you can submit, this is like the only type of document you can submit after the fact. I myself, for example, I was done with my bachelor's, but when I applied for the fellowship, I was still enrolled in my bachelor's program, and they wanted a copy of my final degree, and I couldn't give them that since I was still studying. So the stipulation was that if you're still enrolled in a program, you can simply send an unofficial transcript, but once you graduate, they want that copy ASAP. I mean, the day after you graduate, send that copy, right? Because that way they have it as soon as possible, and they can take it into consideration whenever they're talking about outcome. Okay, I don't see any more questions here. I want to make sure you both take advantage, you all take advantage of the opportunity. But I will say that I'm going to send a follow-up email with all of these links. I shared some of them in the chat, but all of the links that and the databases I talked about, so Hochschulkompass, the Study Finder, and so on, and all of these other pages. Also relevant links, for example, to the German government's website when it comes to COVID-19 updates and entry into Germany and so on. So I'll share all of these important links with you in a follow-up email later. I'm going to see if I can have this webinar posted online for all of you for relevant information. But again, the first step is to check if you're eligible, and that you will need the article for bachelor's requirements, and you will also need to check in the DAAD or the ANABIN database if you qualify. Something that is really important to keep in mind is that you look, if you're a junior or a senior, then your schedule's a little bit tight. You probably have already the rest of your classes that you're taking until you graduate set in stone. But if you are a freshman, or you know a freshman, or someone who is thinking about studying in Germany, you need to look already when you're a freshman or a sophomore. That would really help you, especially because the high school diploma and IB diploma depend on the actual subjects that you study. You can already start kind of creating your schedule that you need to qualify when you're a freshman or a sophomore. So make sure you do that in advance if that applies. Okay. Students should check for the qualifying classes ASAP, exactly, to make sure that they qualify, or so they can add the class as a senior, or so you can avoid Studienkolleg. Again, Studienkolleg is something a lot of students want to skip. They don't want to wait a year to start their study program. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world. Actually, I hosted also a webinar yesterday, or Friday, today's Sunday, sorry. For me, it was yesterday. But the previous webinar I hosted, a student said, oh, what if someone's not really ready? Do you recommend the Studienkolleg? And maybe you really don't want to do that, but if you're really nervous about going to another country and doing a program, or you're worried about your German skills, you can also feel free to do a Studienkolleg. Okay, follow-up question while still in high school. Will they accept you for the winter semester of the same year, or you need to wait until the summer semester? That's a really great question. I will say that something that's quite similar to the US is that the first semester is usually the winter semester. In the US, we call it the fall semester. It usually starts in like August. But here in Germany, it starts in September or October. Actually, October is the more widely accepted deadline. So October is when the winter semester starts, and this is usually the first semester of the year. So if you are applying to a study program, your first semester is probably going to be in October. But if for whatever reason you are not able to start in October, it depends on the program. They might tell you, sure, start in the summer, that's not a problem. But for my program, as an example, they offer, you have to take certain classes in your first semester as an introduction for the rest of the courses you're going to take, more or less. And they only offer these classes because maybe the professor is only available in the winter. They only offer them in the winter. So for my study program, if you cannot start in the winter semester, it was sort of a too bad, start next year. You couldn't really start in the summer semester. So the enrollment was just in the winter for the first semester. But it can be different with some study programs. If they have kind of year-round availability of those courses, they might say, sure, winter or summer. So the winter semester is the main first semester, but it doesn't matter if you want to start later. That's also fine. Okay. Okay, I have some thank yous. You're welcome. I'm glad it was informative. Again, yes, Claudia is really on point. That make sure you check in advance, because again, if Studienkolleg can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on if you want to wait or not. But maybe you check when you're a sophomore and luckily say, okay, I just need an extra science class. I didn't really want to take one, but I really need it, so you can do it. And then you can be eligible without having to do any extras. If you have AP classes, or if you are particularly well with AP testing, even though you don't want to take an AP course, just really consider taking some AP classes, because it boosts your chances of having your high school diploma recognized for a study program here in Germany. Okay. Okay, I have a lot of thank yous. I'm really glad you're saying that it was really informative. I'm really happy that it was useful for you. I really encourage all of you to make sure that you take a look at scholarships as well as study programs, because like I said, the scholarship deadline can be before the study program. And even, I mean, if you don't need a scholarship and you're like, oh, my parents are going to like cover the costs and give me money for traveling and so on, it's not a problem. Maybe you can just apply anyways. Maybe you can just have like extra money for more traveling. I don't know. So it's something to think about. So I have another question. In your experience, is it realistic to apply the same year when the IB exams are not out until the end of July? Ooh, that's a really good question. So I would say this depends on the deadline of the study program, because I think with the IB exams being in July, you can't really find out if you qualify until July. I would recommend that you contact the coordinator and ask them via email, because like I said, German universities are sticklers for rules, but it always depends on who is working and who's in charge of the application. And if they're willing to say, well, you know what, just apply and send the exam grades when you have them, then great. But just ask. Asking is never bad. You can always maybe see if there's an exception for you. I will say they may let you apply and then just have you turn in your grades in July. Some deadlines are actually in August. So since the program started in October, some universities that have maybe like a really efficient admissions office, deadlines can be as late as August. A friend of mine she's from Italy, she just started her master's program here in Berlin last year. Her deadline application was in August, and then she found out the last week of September. So she had maybe a 2-month wait to find out. But again, if you have a program or 3 programs that you want to apply to and all of the deadlines are in August, well, then you don't really have to worry. You'll have your grade by then. But if one of your top programs has the deadline in June, maybe email them and explain your situation and tell them, I can't control the date of the test, and would it be okay? And because of COVID-19, many admissions offices are kind of extending deadlines and due dates for paperwork and so on, because for international students especially. Okay, and more thank yous. I'm so glad all of you are enjoying this information. I know it's a lot to take, and that's why I'm going to send a follow-up email with all of these details for you and these links. I think the best advice I can give you is to buy a planner if you don't have one, or use a calendar, or set reminders on your phone calendar. You just have to do this when it comes to the applications. I do this myself. I even set a reminder to myself today, webinar, because for me it's Sunday evening and I usually don't have webinars on the weekend, just in case I forgot. It's really important that you don't want to not be eligible for a study program just because you missed an application deadline. Also, don't underestimate how long it will take you to collect official documents, certified documents like some sort of language certificate or something like this. I mean, if you already have the DS2-Sprachdiplom, it shouldn't be a problem. But official documents, it can take a lot of time to get them, because offices are closed because of the pandemic, especially if you have to mail in hard copies. Many universities in Germany are waiving the requirement of hard copies because of the pandemic, but some are not. Some are saying, yeah, send it to us in the mail, and if it arrives late, you're not going to be eligible, which is really scary because it's not up to you. And you don't know how long it's going to take in the mail. You don't know if it's going to take a week or if it's going to take a month to get here. So make sure you have a calendar that lists, okay, on this day, a month and a half before the deadline, I need to mail them these hard copies of these documents. Get tracking on that package. Make sure you email them when it arrives to confirm they received it. So just make sure you take all of these things into consideration when you're thinking, okay, it's probably online, not so bad. You would think everything is online, but that's not really always the case here in Germany. Okay, another question. Should high school students start checking for requirements to apply to a German university in the sophomore year? I would say so. I would say already, even as a freshman, you can start looking and start planning. Freshman or sophomore, you really have the advantage that you can lay out your schedule to make sure that you qualify, especially if you already know what you want to study. I mean, I will say that when I was a freshman, I had no idea what I would be majoring in my bachelor, so that's not a problem too. Actually, that's really normal, but I don't know, if you've known since you were 8 that you just really wanted to study mechanical engineering, then sure, you can already set up as a freshman or a sophomore the classes that you're going to take throughout the rest of your high school years in order to be eligible for study programs. Even better would be if you already search for a study program and say, okay, I have my heart set at studying at LMU in Munich. It's one of the best universities in Germany. I've got to go there. And then you kind of set up your high school schedule to make sure you're eligible for the study program from LMU. And so that's also good. I would really encourage you to do that, actually. If you're a junior or a senior, it's a little bit more difficult, but again, it's not impossible. If you do a one-year Studienkolleg, which actually is beneficial to many students, that you can also do the year of Studienkolleg and then be eligible. Many students actually, I would say, benefit from that year because if you have never really been away from your parents for a long period of time, it's your first time out of the country, you might have culture shock that 1 year, and you don't want it to affect your studies, that 1 year period might be good for you, especially coming from sunny California. Winter in Germany is no joke. It's dark here from 3 p.m. and the sun's only out for a couple hours and it's not actually even real sun. So maybe there's a Berlin winter depression that like the internationals always joke about, like, oh, I can't wait when the sun comes back out in the spring. So maybe you have to think about these things too, and maybe a Studienkolleg would be good for you. Okay, how can you contact a German university when applying? Ooh, that's a really great question. So you can always contact a German university. They have a phone number, and in Germany, calling is really normal. I know that's not normal anymore to make a phone call, but that's just the way things get done in Germany. But do not worry, you don't have to get up at crazy hours to make a phone call to Germany. Actually all universities have contact via email on their course website. So if you don't know how to even search for German universities, you have no idea where you can find one, let me quickly share again the page to the study finder. So I don't know how many universities we have listed on the study finder. Hochschulkompass also has, when you're searching for the study program, a link to the university page of that study program. Here we have all universities listed as well, and you can go directly to the course site of that study program, and they always have like a contact information button. Let me just click on a random study program. Subjects. Because I want to show you there's contact forms. You can contact them via email, and it's not a problem at all to contact admissions offices. You can email them in German, you can email them in English. You'll probably get a faster reply if you email in German, I will say that. Okay, so let's look at LMU. And we'll click on a study program from LMU, and we'll go to the LMU's website for that study program. So there's 30 LMU courses. These are just English ones, but I'm just showing you how to look at the course website for a study program. So, okay. So let's go to this physics program. It's a master's program, but again, I'm just showing you. This is a master's in physics. It's free. And you just click on course website. So here's the overview of the program, tuition-free, Master Science and Physics, LMU, and then you click on it and it takes you to the website directly. So here you can see all of the details. It's LMU's official site. You can see all of the details of this program, and then they typically have an email, or they list like the person who's in, here you can see, they list the person who's in charge of the program, Ansprechpartner. There you go. And so you can open this in a different tab, and then you can find the Ansprechpartner, so the person in charge of that program, for contact, and you can email them, you can follow up with them, and so on. So they have all of the different contacts here for all of the study programs. So here we see for the physics program, it's this person, here's their email, here's the room they're located on campus, and you can even contact them and give them a phone call. So this is on all course websites. I mean, this is really standard that you have a contact email. And it's not even just for the admissions office of the university. In Germany, each study program has its own little admissions department. And so their own person who's in charge of these admissions. There isn't really like a general admissions office. And so that's something else that varies. So if you want to know anything about the study program and you email like an info site from the university, they're just going to forward you someone else's email. So just go and search for the program. Again, you can do this on Hochschulkompass or the Study Finder. Click, it links you to the course website, and then you can see here the email, and then you can contact them directly. So it's not a problem. They're used to getting emails from students. Okay, and I have just a few more questions, and then I will be all done. How soon, while still in high school, can you reach out to a German university you're looking to apply to? As soon as you want. I think they don't really care. If you contact them and ask them questions, they're not going to ask you, well, what year are you? It depends if I'm going to take the time to answer your question. Of course, they're going to follow up and give you information and be excited that you're reaching out to them. If you want to apply, don't apply until you're a junior or a senior. Actually, that you have to apply usually half a year before the study program starts, depending on the requirements of the program. So probably senior year, but again, you can contact them anytime and ask them some questions. That's not a problem at all. And one last question. Will you do this presentation again soon? We do host webinars for free a lot, but we typically host webinars that are more general about topics, different topics in studying in Germany. So this webinar is actually very special because it's specifically for US students. The webinars I typically host are not for US students, and they're more general. Like we have so many topics like strategic application tips and strategies, or scholarships in Germany. We also host webinars in different languages. So this one was actually a very special webinar, which was customized for all of you, for US students and US parents, because you have different requirements when it comes to visa and so on. But if, let's say, later down the line, you find out you're applying to a study program and you know you're going to have to use this application process called UniAssist, we have a webinar explaining everything you need to know about UniAssist. Let's say you need to get a visa because you don't have dual citizenship and you want information on that. We have a webinar about getting a visa. If you decide, okay, I want to study at a German university, but I don't want to do the German winter with COVID-19, I think I'll stay in Cali. Well, you can do an online program, totally normal. You can study from Cali, and we have a webinar about that. So we have different topics in Spanish, different languages as well. And you can feel free to look at our website and register for any of these webinars. But again, the content will not be as customized as it was to all of you today. Typically, it's just a little bit more general. However, for example, the visa webinar, I do talk about different countries' visas. And since the US is part of the Schengen Agreement, it's a little more general. Okay, so thank you so much. I answered all your questions, and I'm all out of time as well. So I think I'm going to wrap everything up today. Thank you so much for joining. I really hope it was useful for you, for all of you students and parents watching. Please feel free to email me. Again, I put that in the chat at the top. If you have any more specific questions, maybe I didn't answer something or you have a special case. I don't know the answer to everything, but I can do my own research and find it and provide you with some sources as well. So please follow up if you have any questions, and please feel free to use all of the information that's on our site as well, and make sure you look at scholarships too well in advance. So best of luck to all of you with your application processes. I hope to maybe run into you on the street in Germany soon. And I wish you all the best of luck with the rest of your studies and with your applications to study at a German university. And enjoy the rest of your Sunday. For me, it is 9:30 p.m. So I'm going to have a tea now and get ready for bed, but have a great rest of your day. Bye. Thank you so much.